If we do not focus on what's happening in China today, we're going to miss out. I'm telling you, this is extremely important stuff. Looking at geopolitical problems, the potential for World War III, what's happening in Russia and Ukraine, and of course, Taiwan. I need to cover some aspects because that relates to the economy that you experience in the UK, in the US, Canada, Australia, and so on. The world is facing several challenges that could impact individuals, the global economy, and the world as a whole. Let's take a closer look at some of these. China's population is shrinking, which could affect the global economy. In fact, China being such a significant player in the global economy, any significant slowdown in its growth could lead to poverty and economic instability worldwide. We'll talk more about that in a second, okay? Russia is moving away from using the US dollar and relying more on the Chinese yuan, which could decrease the demand for US currency and the impact on the global economy. You know, as it stands right now today, the US dollar represents 59% of total global reserves. That number has been declining year over year. More on that in a second. It could also lead to increased political tension between the US and Russia, which could have far-reaching consequences. That's one of the aspects for today. And of course, there are fears of a potential arms race between major powers, with the US officials urging China, do not supply arms to Russia, which could lead to increased tension and even the possibility of nuclear war. They're warning about this all the time. Don't push me, I got the button. This highlights the importance of maintaining global peace, which of course the military-industrial complex doesn't want anything to do with. China's economic support for Russia could lead to more sanctions, which could increase everything that we have been seeing over the last while. This is a really difficult scenario for a lot of these countries, and it affects you. So let's begin by seeing this particular article, which highlights how China's shrinking population could have a ripple effect on the global economy. And there are a few points that I took the liberty of pulling up for you that ultimately we need to understand. China's growth story was one that supported the economy in the United States. So China is just rapidly growing for years and years, and now we are seeing a different side of it. China's population is shrinking, which could lead to slower economic growth, potentially even job losses. China is one of the world's largest economies, so any slowdown in its growth would have a significant impact on the economy as a whole. That means the US economy, the UK economy. Look at luxury goods in Europe, for instance. A lot of these luxury good makers, they send a good percentage of that stuff into China. So if China's slowing down, wait a minute, you got a problem. Those companies, those investments, maybe your 401k pension fund is invested in LVMH. Well, suddenly, if China's not buying as much LVMH products, they are going to take a hit. You see how that works? China's economy impacting the rest of the world. This could lead to an increased poverty, economic instability, other factors that for a lot of people, they just don't see the connections there, but here we have it. This is the way it goes, okay? And that's the kind of thing that we will be paying attention to here on this channel. Make sure you subscribe so that I can give you all the latest and greatest information. So this is talking about the leader of China shrugging off criticism in a push for even more control. And this has been the case for the last while. The emperor wants to, of course, maintain that control, have all of his, buddies around him, the people who would keep him in that position for the longest period possible. There was a, concern that he was going to be pushed out. It doesn't seem like that's the case at all. And that's just something I want to show you because it connects in with where we've seen China over the past few years. I think that trend is going to continue. It's not going to change. They're not going to get in some new leader and things are going to change it. No. The policies of the past few years will likely be the policies that we'll see in the next few years. Then the next is about Russia. Now, of course, you're seeing what's going on with Ukraine and so on. Russia is easing its dependence on the US dollar and quickly growing reliant on the Chinese yuan, which could turn out to be either a boon for Moscow or a substantial risk. That's really the key right now. All of this is coming at a time in which the US is sanctioning Russia heavily, so Russia is forced into these circumstances. just like they did away with all of, there was something called major foreign holders of treasury securities. If you search that up, you will see the list of all the different countries that purchase US treasuries, and you look through that list, and it's China, it's Japan, it's all these other countries, and Russia was on that list. However, a few years ago, they basically wiped out their entire presence with that. And they needed it in some instances because they needed to fund what they were doing, their government. They're saying, okay, well, can't use these US dollars, let's just get rid of them and let's, bring that in. But on the other side of it, they're being sanctioned heavily, and they're just saying, why are we doing business in this US dollar? Let's just do away with that. And so that's what we're getting a lot of today. This could lead to decreased demand for the US currency, which could impact the global economy, not just because of Russia, but other countries doing the same thing. Like I said in the introduction, 59% of global reserves are the US dollar. If you look at, let's say, number 2, 3, and 4, we're way, those countries are way down the list. Those currencies are way down the list. But like the point is, over the years, that has been declining. More currencies are coming up. Other countries are just saying, yeah, let's do business between each other. Let's not use the US dollar anymore. That's very, very key. And the more that these countries are separate from each other, it has the possibility to lead to war. Okay, because when you're so intertwined, if you were to attack the other, it would hurt you as well. But if you're, reliant on each other in a sense, you wouldn't do that because that would hit yourself. It would hit your own people, and then there would be a revolt. So that's part of the concern that we have today. Chinese Lunar New Year travel plunged by believe it or not, 924 million in 2023. And this is, part of what they're talking about in here. You can read it for yourself. Essentially just saying in many different ways they measured travel and it had declined. That's all you need to know. Like comparing 2019, okay, before the whole 2020 situation, till today, a lot less travel. In my personal experience with the people I work with, there really seemed to be kind of normal. But I mean, we're looking at the data, and that's the data. I can give you anecdotal evidence. Everything seemed to be normal, like 2019 kind of normal, but it depends on where they were. I think a lot of people, especially over the past few years, what happens is you have all these people that live in the villages and they go out to these manufacturing cities. They live there for basically pretty much all year. And then when it comes time to New Year, they head back to their villages. And this is very common for a lot, like huge migration that happens during that period. And so this is the point. I just wanted to show you that anecdotal evidence, the data. It's a little mixed, but this is them just showing us if things are slowing down, like if that is one piece of data that's coming through, they're slowing down, that has an impact. That has a direct impact on the economy as a whole. Okay, like I said, with Europe, LVMH, and so on. So watch that, okay? Watch carefully. US officials urge China not to ship arms to Russia. Very key. Very key right now. You're seeing this at a time in which we've got Ukraine and Russia. We've got all these things happening, and there's the possibility that one thing leads to another. The next thing you know, somebody hits a big button and you got a nuke set off. I think one nuke set off might just be the end of it all. So I'm hopeful that, nobody would be crazy enough. But things do happen. Accidents do happen. It could be somebody gets the wrong message. It could be for the wrong reason. That's another thing that, unfortunately, we're in this world today where the technology in military has gotten so good, snap of a finger, and you could basically wipe out practically a whole country. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, cooler heads will prevail in these circumstances. Nuclear warfare. China arming Russia. Fears of new Cold War rise. There's been a lot of talk about this because of what's been happening with Russia. They're saying China's supporting them. China's going to give them arms. We don't want this to happen. The US is saying, no, you don't do that. And at this point, we have no evidence of that. They have been supporting them in other ways, but in this way, perhaps not. I think China's trying to play it smart. China's saying, we're going to do business with Russia. Russia's our friend. But when we come onto the stage at the United Nations and all these things, we're going to just, you know, be political about it. If you notice what politicians do all the time, they beat around the bush. Hey, why don't you do that? Or you promised you were going to do this. Oh, well, you know, and they go around it, and then they come, oh, next question. That's the way that works. China's doing that right now. I see that on the global stage. All right. So we'll see what happens here with this. I think for a lot of people, they are simply concerned, and for good reason. China's economic support for Russia could elicit more sanctions, and that really is something that is a big concern. For these countries here, you're looking at it in a time in which sanctions really become the start of war. Like, how many times does that happen? Always, always. Okay, well, first we're going to sanction. First we're going to talk to them. Then we're going to sanction them. Then we try to do a coup d'etat. Then it's just like one step after another. Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And I believe that book, by the way, is in the link in the description. Confessions of an Economic Hitman. If I have the website up and running, probably not. But anyway, looking at this, China's economic support could lead to more sanctions, causing more instability. The impact of this on individuals in the global economy could be severe and long-lasting. These type of things do not go away overnight. Sanctions, generally, they just keep piling up. They don't go away. Look at what happened with the tariffs. That was devastating for many businesses. Suddenly you got a 25% tax. There goes your profit margin. Not good. There's some loopholes and things, but just generally, it just really hits real hard. What we've seen over the last while, problems are here. They're evident. And if we don't come to terms on this, a lot of people are going to be suffering. If China is not, on good terms with these countries, watch out. Slower activities, less income, less purchases. That means, it's just worse. Okay, we need China to be doing their thing, to be manufacturing lots of stuff, to be shipping that out to Europe, to be shipping it to the US for what they do. Okay, and you might say, no, we need to produce everything. Well, this right now, hopefully that changes. Semiconductors could be made in the US and all these different things, but you can't just shut it off like that. That's extremely dangerous. They set up this world to be this way on purpose. We know that. We know about the offshoring on purpose. But you can't just say, okay, that's it, we're going to shut it off. That's devastating to your economy if you live in the UK, US, Canada, and so on. So we got to watch out. We got to be very careful about that. We have to do what we can to start manufacturing in our own countries where it makes sense. We got to do that for things that are so important. If it's some wire, this little remote or whatever, like, it doesn't matter. You can make that anywhere. But when it's talking about something so important, I think that's much better to be made, in your own countries. I just think that's the way it should be. But nothing more important, by the way, than food. The food supply, like how much of that food supply, you grow a chicken in the US, it gets shipped to China, processed in China, shipped back, and by the way, labeled as the US. How funny is that? That's the way this world works. We got to change that. Hopefully it'll happen in the future. Guess what? You've been watching this video for a little while. Hope this didn't seem like a rant. I'm trying to get to the points. I want to thank you for being here. And the best thing you got to do is you got to hit that subscribe if you haven't already. Each and every day I bring you the latest and greatest information. Take care. See you tomorrow.